Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next shoemaker workshop. This is workshop number 26. Sorry, 26. It's Or Le Chet of Tevet, which is also the night of the 28th of January as well. Well, actually, it's 27th now, but it's 27th tomorrow. Whatever. You know how that works. And the title of this workshop is called How to Kasher a Non-Kosher Vessel. But really, we're not going to all speak really about physical vessels and physical kashering at all, because that's not the topic. As we've been seeing lately, just a quick review. What is the topic? Well, we started a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the four great bad character traits and their corresponding corrective good character traits, right? Arrogance, which is corrected with humility, or shiflut, and vain speech, which is corrected through silence, and lust of pleasure, which is corrected with by a repulsion of physicality, and depression, which is flipped with happiness. We started there, and I thought, well, that's just that should be that's a nice topic. But then, as I was giving it over and we were talking about it, I realized really we should go into the whole depths of it, because it's a really profound teaching. And then we started back at the beginning of that teaching of Likutei Moharan, Dalet 4, number 4, and we started. So just a quick review of what we've covered so far. It will take like a couple minutes. In workshop number 24, we talked about what is the goal? What is the goal? The goal is to see that everything that happens to us is for our good. That's the goal. And therefore to be able to praise Hashem, both kinds of names of Hashem. One, the name Yud Ki Vav Ke, which is normally what we say Hashem, which is sort of the source of chesed and rachamim, things that appear to be something good to us. And then also there's the name Elokim, which is rooted, which is also in Malchut, and that's sort of the name associated with din and judgment. And we don't normally want to thank Hashem for all the quote things that appear bad to us, but we have to learn that really both, it's all good. It's just that it's our appearance, the way we look at things may not be so accurate all the time. And then we learned in Sif Beit in that Torah, that how do we achieve the goal? How do we achieve being able to thank Hashem and recognize Hashem for good, no matter whether it appears good or whether it appears not so good. And we learned that the way that we do that is we have to raise Malchut up from the dirt, basically, to bring back the Shechinah, so that she is within the relationship of Klal Yisrael, and within an intimacy with Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And then we said, well, how do we do that? How do we raise up Malchut? And the answer to that was, if you remember, is you have to do Vidui Dvarim before a Talmid Chacham. Now these Talmidei Chachamim that we're talking about, not just Stam Talmidei Chachamim, we're dealing with very, very special Talmidei Chachamim. We're going to see that here in a bit, hopefully today, which I would just normally call tzaddikim, people that are literally holy, good, and although the thoughts are holy, completely good all the time, 24/7, without really interruption. Like literally like a living Sefer Torah. And then we learned in the last class, which is workshop 25, what happens when we do an aveirot, which is that the letters of that sin that we committed get literally carved into our essence, into our bones, and that then causes all kinds of corollary and derivative problems to arise in our life, mainly din, but also things like sickness and bad relationships and all kinds of messed up situations. And then we looked at a couple of examples where we saw people doing vidui. A very interesting case about Yehuda and his bones. His bones were not really back together again until Moshe Rabbeinu, the ultimate, Tzaddik Ador, the ultimate Talmid Chacham, so he was able to basically accept Yehuda's vidui and raise it up to Hashem and intercede and make atonement for Yehuda. Well, that's in a nutshell where we've been. Is there any questions on any of this topic before we get started with this new material today? All right. So you take out your notes. We're going to begin with a question. Now we're basically in Likutei Moharan 4 and subsection 6. And we're going to stay in subsection 6 for the duration of tonight's class. The first question we want to find out is, what is fire likened to? Or a better way to put it grammatically is, what is likened to fire? So let's read what Rabbi Nachman says here in Likutei Moharan 4, C 6. He says the following: V'zeh, this thing that we've been talking about along, meaning doing Vidui before Talmid Chacham, says V'zeh b'chinat chachzarat malchut l'sharsha. This whole topic we've been talking about is, again, it's a bit of a review statement, but it's good to get our heads back into this game. This is a bit of a deep topic. This whole idea that we've been talking about of doing Vidui, what's the point of it? The point of it is to restore Malchut, the sphere of Malchut, which is the Shechinah, back to her root. So now he said, well, what's that exactly? Because you remember, the Malchut or the Shechinah, because of our sins, she got sort of captured by the Goyim, and they're now nourishing off of her, giving themselves strength to make them big and make us small and persecute us. And that's all as a result of our aveirot. So by doing Vidui, we get her back. We help to restore her back to her place, back to her root. What is the root? Now, we talked last time about what is her place. Her place is to be with the Ribono Shel Olam, is to be with the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, with the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to be with Yichud in that relationship. And then from that relationship, then all kinds of Shefra and Bracha and Hatzlacha comes down to Klal Yisrael. But what is the real root? What is the root in the higher worlds of Malchut? That's what he's asking here. We're going to find out. Let's go on. Kishor shemalchut hu eish. The root of Malchut is fire. So that's why we're going to talk tonight about fire. So why is it likened to fire? Why is Malchut, the root of Malchut, this spiritual concept called fire? Because, see, fire also has an aspect. Fire is associated with din, right? Fire is red. Red is din. Pardon me. And Malchut is also an aspect of din because even we can understand that from the physical world that we live in. A king has orders and commands, and if you don't do those orders or those commands, then he has the power of the throne, of the crown, to execute din and judgment against those who violate his word. So built into the very essence of Malchut is din, and is what we call geburot. So that's why, in a simple way, the root of Malchut is H. Now that's one thing. Let's go on. Now, first of all, he's going to now give two examples proving to us and showing to us that Malchut, the root of Malchut, is H. Let's go on and see how he brings that proof. Kamosh Amru Chachamenu Zichronam Livracha. So as Chazal say, and he brings down this very interesting Gemara from the second Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Beis. He says, which discusses this person who was the father of Eruvin. His name was Nevat. And Nevat had a dream at one point. This is while Shlomo is, I guess, ruling, and then his son, Rehoboam, takes over the throne. And this fellow, Nevat, has this dream. And in this dream, he sees something. What he saw made him make a mistake. What was that mistake? He instigated and led a rebellion against the monarchy of David HaMelech in the person of David's grandson at this time. So the Gemara talks about this in depth, but Rabbi Nachman just brings it up to illustrate one point. So Rabbi Nachman writes, Lama ta'a Nevat. Why did this man Nevat, why did he make a mistake? Shira'a yatsa eish me amato. Okay, so I'm going to apologize for the wording that I'm going to have to say to make this clear, but everybody, we understand, women and men. He saw in a dream that fire was coming out of his male member. And that's a pretty bizarre dream, but that's what he saw. And because he saw fire come out of his member, he took that as a sign, because fire is a symbol of Malchut, and he said, out of me will come forth Malchut. Therefore, he felt like he understood that David HaMelech had no right to continue in the seat of monarchy, but not David Melech, but David's dynasty, and that he was the one to establish a dynasty. So what was the mistake? In fact, Rabbi Nachman is bringing this up to prove that fire is, in fact, a symbol of Malchut. So what was the mistake? The mistake was that he thought the fire, the Malchut, should emanate from him. But in fact, if he paid more attention to the dream, he would have realized that the fire came out of his member, meaning that it wasn't going to be him that was the one who would instigate a new Malchut, a new monarchy, but rather it would be his seed, it would be his son, Eruvin. And that's in fact what happened. So that was his mistake. He saw a sign that he knew what the sign generally symbolized. Fire is a symbol of Malchut, but he made a mistake in thinking that it was him instead of his son. That was going to be the one who was going to be given this by Hashem. And so, that's the beginning of the 10 tribes, right? That eventually Eruvin leads all the 10 tribes away from the Davidic kingship. All right, that's one example. Let's go on. The next one, Rabbi Nachman says, Torah nikreit eish. Right? The Torah itself is called eish. So this is the second thing that is likened to fire. First of all, the first thing we saw was Malchut itself. The sphere of Malchut itself is likened to fire. And now we're learning the second thing. The second thing that's likened to fire is the Torah itself. Right? We have the famous expression. We have even a yeshiva here in this country called Eish HaTorah. Right? We also have a Beit Knesset here in town called Eish HaTorah. So we all know that there's a fire of the Torah. Shemisham HaMalchut, because from there comes forth Malchut. And once again, it's tied together with Malchut. What is the connection between Torah and Malchut? First of all, we'll get there. But let's first read what he says. There's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, which he says, for example, part of it, says, Hello, kol divari keish. Is it not so that my word, Hashem says, is it not so that my word is a fire? You see, so we see very clearly from the Navi that Torah, the word of Hashem, is like fire. Great. And then he brings up another pasuk from Mishli, which says, Bi malachim yimlochu. In me, meaning in Torah, kings will rule. And so it's brought down by Chazal, who are these kings that rule in Torah? They are the Talmidei Chachamim. They are the sages. They're the kings. They are likened to kings. And so we see the connection between the Torah and kingship. And now we also see the connection between Torah and Talmidei Chachamim. Because now he's going to spell that out specifically. So the Ikar Torah, Hem Talmidei Chachamim. The essence of the Torah is Talmidei Chachamim. That's the whole sort of raison d'etre of Torah, is to create Talmidei Chachamim. Kamo she'amru Chachmeinu Zichron Livchor, like Chazal say in Makot, the second Makot, Daf Chaf Beit Amid Beit. It's a very interesting statement. It says, talking there about people that are not exactly like got the head screwed on straight. And it says, Kama Tip Shei Sha'ar Inche, how foolish and stupid are the rest of the people, the Kaima that stand up, Mi Kame Sefer Torah, that stand up before the Sefer Torah, Velo Kaima Mi Kame Sorba Midrabanan, but they don't stand up before a sage. He says this is a very stupid thing. Why is it a stupid thing for people? They give great kavod to a physical Sefer Torah, but they don't give the proper kavod to a Talmid Chacham. Why not? Because one, they don't understand the greatness of a Talmid Chacham. They really don't. We really don't understand. And in fact, this statement from the Gemara is trying to tell us that, in fact, if you really understood it properly, you would realize, in fact, that it's actually greater kavod within a Talmid Chacham than in the Sefer Torah itself. Why? Because the Talmid Chacham has the ability to disseminate Torah. A Sefer Torah sits in the Aron, except when it's brought out and read from. But a Talmid Chacham walks around in our community. He sits in the Beit Knesset. He's in the Beis Midrash. He's talking to people. He's giving shurim, whatever he's doing, all these things. He's interacting with people. He's spreading words of Torah. And that's why the greatness of a Talmid Chacham, in a certain sense, right, is actually greater than that of a Sefer Torah, which is why Rabbi Nachman says here, what it says is, Ikar HaTorah him HaTalmidei Chachamim. The real essence, the main point, the reason for the Torah is to create Talmidei Chachamim. So we see that the Talmid Chacham, and again, not Stam Talmidei Chachamim, we're talking about very, very unique, very, very special people who literally are 100% and completely and totally a Sefer Torah themselves. So there we had three things we've learned so far. There's three things that are likened to fire. One is, just to quickly review, one is the sphere of Malchut itself, which is Shechinah. Number two is the Sefer Torah, or is Torah in general. And number three is a Talmid Chacham. They're all likened to fire. So now that we know that those things are likened to fire, we ask the next question: how does one kasher a non-kosher vessel? This is what all of a sudden Rabbi Nachman takes this, all these ideas of fire, and now he brings it down into the spiritual world for us. And you can read all kinds of laws about kashrut. That's great. We need to know that. It always seems to come out a lot during Pesach time, right before Pesach, we're trying to kasher all of our pots and, do libun and all this kind of stuff, and hagala, which is all good. What we do all need to learn all of these halachas ourselves. That's true. But we're now going to look at one aspect of a statement in the Chumash, and Rabbi Nachman is going to apply it into the physical world. It now relates to us in a more personal, deep way. At least I think it does to me. And so this is what is meant by the following pasuk in Bamidbar, chapter 31, verse 23. Kol davar asher yavo v'esh, ta'aviru v'esh. That's what the pasuk says. Anything, meaning any vessel that went into the fire, right? You basically bring it out of the fire. You have to pass it through the fire. Meaning, if you have some kind of a pot, and this pot absorbed taste that it shouldn't have absorbed, or flavor that it shouldn't have absorbed. Let's say maybe you have a dairy pot and accidentally dropped in some beef stew, and as a result, the flavor of that meat got absorbed right into the walls of the pot. So that's what it says. Kol davar asher yavo eish. Anything that comes into it through fire has to pass through the fire. What do you do to fix that? What do you do to kasher that pot? You have to do what's called libun. You have to pass that pot through fire. The only way to get out what it absorbed is to treat it the exact same way at the time that it absorbed it. You have to treat it with the exact same kind of heat in order to expel that which it absorbed. That's the basic principle for kashering vessels. Same thing, like if you're only boiling eggs in or something, and it never was on the fire directly, but it was only in water, then it only requires hagalah. Like that's the basic principle. So what does this have to do with our topic? Let's see what he says. He's now going to darshan this pasuk phrase by phrase. He's going to explain to us what the pasuk means. All right, I skipped this section, so I apologize. I'm going to come back to this section that I skipped, but I'll finish this first since I started. Okay, the pasuk says, "Kol davar asher yavo v'esh." Anything that comes into fire. Now he says davar. What is davar? What is a thing? What is anything davar? We already learned last class or two classes ago that the word davar, word, is associated with malchut. Malchut is associated with peh. Right, Malchut Peh. That's in Petach Eliyahu. It's part of the Zohar. That the sphere of Malchut is associated with Peh. Again, think of it on a very logical basis. A king has authority because he proclaims. That's the Peh, Malchut Peh. But also, we also learned that davar is related to the word dabar. Dabar. Remember that phrase, dabar echad bador. We learned that last time. Dabar echad bador. There was one manhig, one leader. One ruler in a generation at a time. That's it. And we learned that from the Gemara that talked about Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the manik, he was the leader, he was the king. And then his rulership had to come to an end, and then Yeshua took over, right? but there was no overlap. No overlap was allowed. Why not? Because the Gemara says dabar echad bador. Only one leader at a time. So we see the word dabar is related to the word davar. It's the exact same spelling, except with without the what is it? What's the dot called? No, the garish. What's it called? I forgot. Without the dot inside of the bait. Davar. It's the same word. Dagesh, right? Thing. Without the dagesh inside. And clearly, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua, whoever we want to talk about, they're the rulers. They're like the kings, so they are basically malchut. All right, so that's what he's saying. So kol davar, which is an aspect of malchut. We're talking about malchut. That's what Rabbi Nachman wants us to know. We're talking about the subject of malchut. Now, what's the next part? Let's see here. I got two different sheets in front of me. Okay. Now I added the words for you because Rabbi Nachman doesn't put it in there, but it's really this next part of the pasuk, Asher Yavo V'Eish, that which came into the fire. What does that mean? Shenimshach b'toch hatuma. Anything that got drawn down. Now we're talking about something more deep. We're talking about something an aspect of davar, an aspect of malchut, i.e. the Shechinah, right? That got sucked down, got dragged down into Tuma. All of a sudden, you see, we kind of went from a plain, simple explanation of the pasuk, pots and pans and fires and doing libun on a physical basis to what is this? Why do we do these things? Why do we do these things physically? Because the root is in something spiritual. The reason we have the halachas of libun and so on, and hagalaying our pots and the reason we have all those halachas is because their root is in these ideas. Their root is in the spiritual reality of this stuff. And he's telling us now the spiritual reality of these laws. So he's talking about davar, which is malchut. And when malchut gets sucked down and gets drawn down into the midst of tuma, what's that? That's the akum, right? That's the goyim. When the Shechinah gets drawn down and absorbed into the tuma, he even says, betoch chamimut hayetzer. That means the heat, right? The warmth of the yetzer hara. Meaning, why is it that the Shechinah gets sucked down into the klippas of the goyim? Because we allow ourselves to follow after the yetzer hara within us. That fire, that he called it here, chamimut. This warmth, this excitement we get when we think of this sin, chas v'shalom, whatever it happens to be. We get all excited about it. Ooh, I'm going to get to sin, and then that sucks us down, and it sucks the Shechinah down into the klippas of the goyim, into the midst of tuma. That's what it means when the pasuk says Asher Yavo V'Eish. In other words, when we ourselves sin and we do an aveirot, we're the ones that Yavo V'Eish. We're the ones that come down into the fire. And with us comes the Shechinah. Sadly, we drag her along with us. Another example he brings out here is from the Masechet Kedushin, Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph. There's a story of a person called Amram the Chassid. And he really was a tremendous chassid. I think he lived in Naharda. I forget exactly. I think that's where he lived. And he was such a chassid and such a highly respected Talmid Chacham that there was a bunch of women that had been rescued from the goyim or something or other. I don't think the Gemara exactly says how they got rescued, but they got rescued and they were going to be redeemed. So they put them up in his house in the attic, like the upper floor, and the only way to access the upper floor was through a ladder and like a hatch, right, in the floor, like in the old days. You would walk up ladders and open up a hatch and go up to the upper floor. Not like today, you just walk upstairs. So the women were put up in that attic, and they trusted Amram, Rav Amram, the Chassid, because he was such a pious man. They figured that it's okay. There's many women there. It's only him. It wasn't an issue of yichud. They're up there. He's downstairs, and then they moved the ladder out of the way so that there was really no direct access whatsoever anyway. But he was alone in the house, and his yetzer hara got the hold of him, and he says, the Gemara said that He grabbed hold of the ladder, which normally required 10 people to move. This just tells you how powerful the Yetzer Hara can be. And he moved it into position with incredible, strength. It was the strength of the Yetzer Hara. And he started climbing up the ladder because he wanted to do an aveirot. Or multiple aveirot. Who knows? Chas v'shalom. And halfway up the ladder, he stops. and he grabs onto the ladder, he squeezes the ladder with his legs. He's like, and he knows he's being sucked into something wrong, and he's resisting, and no. And he screams out. What does he scream out? Says, Nora be'amram, Nora be'amram. Which means there's a fire in the house of Amram. There's a fire in the house of Amram. And he screamed so loudly that he wanted his fellow sages to hear him. Why? Because he wanted them to come running into the house so that they would break the Yetzer Hara. Because what are you going to do? You're in the midst of all of your peers, right? So he was holding on with all the strength that he could not to keep going up that ladder. And he screams out, "There's a fire in the house of Amram! There's a fire in the house of..." What fire? There was no fire. The house wasn't burning down. And all the sages came in and they got mad at him. He said, you're like mocking us. He said, "Well, I tell you what. He says, I would rather you be mad at me now than you be embarrassed at me in Olam Haba." And we see an incredible Mila that he was willing to be embarrassed and be humiliated in the presence of all his peers in order to stop what could have been a terrible, terrible sin. And so we see when he says there's a fire in the house of Amram, what did he mean? He meant there was a fire in me. And that's the house of Amram, the physical body. The physical body is the house of Amram. And he said, there's a fire burning in my house. That's what he says. That fire is the Yetzer Hara, and it was burning within him. It's burning within the goof. So that's what the pasuk means when it says Asher Yavo V'Eish. Okay? Now, the next part at the end of the pasuk says Ta'aviru V'Eish. You have to pass it through the fire. In order to clean it out, in order to get out the Yetzer Hara, in order to purify the vessel, now in our terms, in order to purify the goof, what do? Nachman says, Tikuno alidei eish, right? That's what it means. So he's just explaining what the pasuk means. You have to pass it through the fire, meaning in order to fix the vessel, you have to pass it through fire. What does that mean? Vidui dvarim lifnei talmid chacham, as we said before. Passing the vessel through the fire to purify that vessel means saying vidui before the talmid chacham. So we see now we kind of tied all these issues together, and we've given ourselves a very beautiful mental picture. Hopefully, it'll help us because sometimes we get wrapped up in the physicalities of words and spiritual concepts that are maybe difficult to understand, and we were like, what am I left with? Well, hopefully, you were going to remember. We're going to remember Amram the Chassid, because that's a beautiful picture that helps us to understand this whole idea. And so, what did he do? He himself did vidui before the sages. That's what he did when he screamed out, "There's a fire in the house of Amram." He was basically saying, "I'm ready about to sin. Help me, my fellow sages." That's doing vidui, and that's what he did, and that's how he was saved, and that's how he cleansed out the Yetzer Hara from his body. Okay, so that's that section. I'm going to go back to the bit I skipped, but I see that there's a comment, so I'm going to just read it. Did on yourself say vidui in front of Moshe after the cow? Okay, we're going to get to that, but not today. So I don't want to go too much into that detail. It's a really good question. And the answer is yes, in short. They were doing tshuva all the time while he was up the mountain. And we'll just explore that more fully next time, because that's getting more to the actual point. So we're going to wait on that one. But it's good to ask the question, because by asking the question, you see, you're like thinking like Rabbeinu, like a little bit, right? Because you're like, well, that's what has to come next. We have to deal with this Chet Ego and Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And so Rabbi Nachman does, in fact, deal with that in the next section. Okay, so now the part that I skipped is really interesting. How does a person become like a Sefer Torah? Because we just said that earlier. We said that the fire is likened to a Sefer Torah, and it's also likened to a sage. So how does a sage become like the Sefer Torah? It's a beautiful piece by Rabbi Natan in Likutei Halachot. in the laws of Beit Knesset, the laws of the synagogue, in Halacha Dalet, subsection 8, and it is a big long section. It's not that long, but it's quite a piece. You have to go through in detail. I'm not doing that here. So I just cut a little bit out because it's a really beautiful. Again, it's a picture. Sometimes mental pictures are the strongest things to help us to remember spiritual ideas. But what does Rabbi Natan write? Adam shekadesh atzmo kochach b'diburei Torah u'tfilah. A person has to basically sanctify himself through two things: through speaking words of Torah and through tefillah. Ad she'it batel legamre adibur legamre. Sorry, I read it wrong. Ad she'it batel legabe hadibur legamre. Canal, right. So we have all kinds of words that we speak. Foolish words, stupid words, nonsensical words. They all have to be canceled out, wiped out. But even more so than that, he's talking about a deeper point. He's going to explain the deeper point now. What he's telling us is that we have to be so immersed in Torah and tefillah that literally the words of Torah themselves become batel to the goof. Let's see what he means by that, because it's a bit of a strange idea. It's the Hainu, so he's going to explain it right now. It's the Hainu. Sheyihe gufo mechubar v'chalul b'hadibor. That the goof, meaning now our goof, our physical body needs to be connected, like mechubar, and completely included in dibor, in the dibor of the Torah. Kamo haklaf, just like a cloth. You take a Sefer Torah, you take a sheet of the Sefer Torah, a cloth. What is that? What is that cloth like? That's like our goof. That's why it's made out of leather. By the way, the halacha is that a cloth has to be made out of a kosher animal's skin, which is leather. Why? Because that cloth is us, symbolically. That's what it is. We're supposed to be the cloth. And this is what Rabbi Nachman is talking about, because we're leather. We're skin. So we're covered in skin. So that's just like a cloth. Hamachubar ba'otiot, right? The cloth is literally connected to the letters that are written on it. Ansha cloth ima otiot. So now to the point that the cloth and the letters, hem davar echad, mamash. But you cannot no longer separate the letters from the cloth on a Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah and the letters that are on it, that are written on it, are literally one and the same thing. It's one thing. That's the way we're supposed to be. We're supposed to make our lives so filled with Torah that literally our goof, which is our cloth, gets written upon by the words of the Sefer Torah so much that the words, the Diborei HaTorah, become, in a sense, mevatel, they become bottled to the goof, which is literally the same thing happening with the Sefer Torah. Kish Shinehem Yachad, the two, meaning the ink of the letters and the cloth, Ham Sefer Torah. That's what a Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah is the two things together. It's the cloth and the letters, not just the cloth and not just the letters. So we, to become like a Sefer Torah, we have to have both the cloth, which is the goof. We're in a goof, and we have to have the letters of Torah written into us. Kamochen mamash, just like that, literally, yeah, goof mechubar b'nichlal b'dibor ad she'iyeh katuv b'nechkak bo heitev. We have to be just like that those letters get written into us. And he even uses the word that we saw last time, v'nechkak, carved into us, literally carved into us. So well, v'lo yeh niktam v'nechkak b'gufo shum ot acher. No other letter gets to be written in us whatsoever. Because think about it. If you have a Sefer Torah and you have some extraneous letter that's not one of the letters of the Torah, what does that happen to the Sefer Torah? It's puzzle, right? It's no good. So that's what he's saying. Same with us. We should have written on us only Diborei Torah, only words of Torah. That's it. That's it. Because any other letters that get written on us, what? The aveirot that we learned about last time, they get carved into our bones. If they're not supposed to be there, we're just supposed to be complete words of Torah written into our goof, expressing itself 24/7. All we are is Torah and tefillah. That person is a Talmid Chacham, and he does not allow any other letter to get engraved into him whatsoever. because that will make them possible as a living Sefer Torah. Going on, let's just pick that thought up again. There's Shum Od Acher, Rak Otiot V'Diburei Torah, just the letters and the words of the Torah. Kamo Klaf Shel Sefer, just like the Klaf of the Sefer Torah. Shein Nichtav Bo Shum Davar Rak Otiot Torah. So this is what he says. It's a beautiful idea. I think it's a really, really beautiful idea. And that's exactly how a Talmid Chacham becomes a Talmid Chacham. Everything out of his mouth is only Torah. Torah and Tefillah, Torah and Tefillah, Torah. Even if he's talking about, I don't know, something silly, you know, every night he used to play chess games with some of the less observant Jews of his day. he would play chess. But every word of his mouth is Torah. It may be Torah, you know, painted and hidden and encapsulated and clothed in all kinds of apparently mundane words and things that seem so secular, but really his kavanah and what he's bringing down, because he's at such a high level, he's able to bring spiritual ideas down into things that people can relate to, and eventually those words of Torah will in a sense, unpack themselves in that person's life and make an impact upon him anyway. That's different than somebody who just goes blah, 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 and tweets like a birdie all day long. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who has real chokmah. That kind of person is the person we're talking about here when we say a Talmid Chacham. Doing Vidui before Talmid Chacham is this kind of Talmid Chacham. If you can find a Talmid Chacham who is literally 24/7 Torah and Tefillah, then this is the kind of person you want to do Vidui before. This is the kind of person that the Rabbeinu was talking about. This is a person like Moshe Rabbeinu. These are the tzaddikim. And so if you ever hear some Talmid Chacham that you think is a Talmid Chacham, or a Rav, or whatever, and you know, he's talking about this silly thing or that silly thing, and you know, we do suspect there's no great kavanas going on here. Okay, it's not the kind of person you want to be doing before. Maybe a great sage, may know lots of Torah, may know lots of halacha. We're not talking about those kind of people. We're talking about people that maybe some of us have never met. Maybe you've never met them before. And you have to pray and seek, Hashem, help me find such a person. Because Hashem never leaves us orphaned. We always have such people in our generation, all the time. All right, let's go on. I'll just check. Okay, no questions. Okay. Now, how do our bones get healed? How do our bones actually get healed? Last time we learned that that's what the Talmid Chacham does. He comes along and he repairs our bones by this process called Vidui. Let's get a little bit more deeper about it now. How does it actually work? He says the following: Vizelashon aveirot. This is the meaning of the word aveirot. Now, aveirot means a sin, right? A transgression. Shehatzeruv shel aveirot over betoch atzmotav. That's why he says the word is called an aveirot. It's called an aveirot because those letters of the aveirot, right, that we talked about last time, those letters that spell out the sin we're committing, they're over, they pass into betoch our bones. They go right into our bones. And that's why it's called an aveirah. Then he goes on, me'aver el aver. They pass from side to side. They like literally eventually spread out like a cancer kilo all across all of our bones and across all of our body. Let's see this expressed in the Zohar. I brought the Zohar down for you in Parshas Noach on page 73b. The following that expresses this idea. Tachazi, come and see. Kivan dechav barnash. When a person sins, kamei kuchibrichu before Hashem, before the Holy One, blessed be He, zim nachal, one time, avid rishimu. That sin makes an impression. It's called a rishimu. It makes an impression, not a deep impression, but it makes a slight little mark, a small etching, a little impression in the bone, in our essence. Vichad chavbe zimna tinyana. And when the person sins 2 times, itakaf hahu rishimu yater. That impression gets strengthened more than it was before. It gets a little deeper, a little bit more noticeable. Chav be zimna trita, and now the person comes on and sins third time. It pashat hahu kitma, that stain, that ketim, that mark gets spread out. Mi sitra da la sitra da, from this side to that side. It's exactly what Rabbi Nachman says. Just basically gets spread out all across the body. Then Kativ, like this pasuk that says the following in Yirmiyahu chapter 2, it says, Niktam avonech lefanai. Your sin is like stained, appears like a stain before me, Hashem says. And that's the idea. Every time we sin, it just makes the bones weaker, more sick, right? And eventually it spreads out over all the bones, i.e. all of our body, all of our essence, till literally many people die of all kinds of sicknesses because literally they're caused by our sins. So Vidui Lifnei Talmid Chacham is a really important curative for all of our problems. Okay, let's go back to the previous statement by Rabbi Nachman now in Likutei Moharan and continue on with that. Well, mitzvah, what does the word mitzvah mean, by the way? Now he wants to talk to us about the word mitzvah. A mitzvah, says, is lashon hit chabrut. The word mitzvah actually means connection. How so? Let's drop down to the bottom of the page and see. I brought down for you a quotation from the second Eruvin, Daf Pebeit, Amud Beit, talking there about the technical laws of an Eruv Tehillim, which we don't need to get into, but just to bring the quote down so you understand what the words that are on your page. Amar Rav Yeshua Bered Rav Idi. What did he say? Pikamar Rav Asi. When Rav Asi said his law, what was Rav Asi's law? His law was Katan ben Sheis Yotze be'eruv imo. A little boy, even the age of 6 years old, he's able to use, and he's Yotze to go outside of his normal Tehum using the Tehum of his mother. So now we're learning that statement that Rav Asi said could go in She'era. What's the case? It could go in She'era of Alav Aviv. Let's say his father made an error for him on the north of the city. The imo ladrom, and his mother made an error for him in the south. So now he can't have both. Which one is going to be the one that by default he uses? If he wants to go beyond the 2,000 almost of a city. So the question is, which is the default one? So the answer is Ta'afilu bar sheish, even a boy who's 6 years old, nami mitzavta, that's the word, mitzavta, the ime nichaleh, that even a boy who's 6 years old would prefer to be connected, that's the word, right? Tzavta, which is the same word for mitzvah. The word mitzvah, tzavta, is the same word. It means to connect. The boy would rather be connected by default to his mother, even when he's 6 years old. That's what Rav Asi's statement means. So back to Rabbi Nachman now. When Rabbi Nachman says, what we just were reading, that mitzvah is the lashon of hit chabrut. The real meaning of the word mitzvah is to connect. To connect. Let's go on. What are we connecting? What are we connecting? When you're connecting your bundles and bundles and bundles of mitzvahs, you're connecting them into a big pile. That's one aspect. That's mentioned in Midrash Rabbah Vayikra, which we'll quote here in a second, but I want to finish the statement by Nachman. We'll look at the Midrash in a second. Azai nidchabru shivrei atzmotav. That's the important point. By doing mitzvot, right, what are we doing? We're connecting bundles and bundles of mitzvahs, hopefully, so there's one or two here and there, but literally bundles and bundles of mitzvahs. We're connecting them, and what's happening in our goof? We're connecting the goof together. We're connecting bone to bone. Remember the story last week about Yehuda? Yehuda, remember his bones were all rattling in his coffin for the 40 years they were walking through the midbar until Moshe Rabbeinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is his reward. He was the one who taught Reuven how to do tshuva. Why don't you accept his tshuva? And boom, ran away. Hashem says, good point, Moshe. I'm going to accept his shuvah because you interceded for him. Because you're the one who can mechaper. And then all of a sudden what happened? All the noise stopped. They didn't open up and take a peek and see, oh, look. But they knew what that meant. What meant? The bones of Yehuda got put back together again. That's what's being alluded to here by these words. That it's connecting all the shivrei, all the brokenness, all the limbs, all the pieces of the bones back together again. Kamosha Katuv, it says in Tehillim, chapter 34, Shomer kol atzmotav achat mehena lo nish bara. Right? You, Hashem, are the one who guards and protects his bones. Not one of them will be broken. That's what it means. Now you know what that thing means. Is that what I'm talking about broken bones? Like, I fell down and I got a broken bone, I have a cast. No, he's talking about this concept of breaking bones as a result of aveirot and healing bones as a result of doing mitzvot. That's what he's talking about. Now let's turn over and just finish up two more. That's essentially the end of that section in Likutei Moharan. But we just read these last couple sources just so we see them. These are the sources that Nachman was referring to. First one from Vayikra Rabbah, chapter 21, and subsection 5. It says the following in the Midrash: Ki v'tachbulot taseh lecha milchama. You're supposed to make a war using clever strategies. You don't go into a war like being stupid, like some people. You're supposed to have a strategy, and you're supposed to know exactly, and you're supposed to be clever. That's what the word takbulo means. It means like clever strategies. You're supposed to go into a war with clever strategies. Now, what's the clever strategies that we're talking about here? Rabbi Natan, Rabbi Acha, b'shem Rabbi Simon Amar. So this is the teaching from Rabbi Simon. What did Rabbi Simon say? Im asita chavilot shel aveirot aseh kenegdam chavilot shel mitzvot. If you have done bundles and bundles of transgressions, then do bundles and bundles of mitzvahs. That's what the Midrash says. Because by doing bundles and bundles of, you're going to need bundles of mitzvahs, basically is what he's saying, in order to counteract all the negative consequences in your bones, in your bones, in your essence, in your very life, you're trying to live, you're trying to have existence. But because of the aveirot, we've really got sucked into death. We've got sucked into tuma. We've got sucked into the control of the sitra akra, kas v'shalom. So he says the way to extricate yourself, you have to do bundles and bundles of mitzvah. Like if somebody's a little bit sick, he just takes a little bit of the medicine. If somebody's like super duper sick, he's got to take a whole bunch of medicine, right? And it's nasty stuff. Some of these medicines can be terrible stuff. But it's still going to be for the person's healing. Okay, now the last quote we have there is from the Midrash Tehillim, and this is coming to explain the pasuk in Tehillim that we read. Let's see what it says. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Simon. Again, another statement from Rabbi Simon. But this is not Shimon, right? Because that's spelled with a shin. This is Simon. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ramach Evarim Yesh B'cha. You have 248, right? Ramach is, the race is 200, Mem is 40, and the Chet is 8. 248. You have 248 limbs. That's like our quote, 248 bones, spiritual bones. We're not talking about physical bones here. You have 248 avarim, limbs, bones. The Ramach mitzvot aseh. And I, Shem says, I have created 248 positive mitzvahs. Yesh b'Torah, that there are in the Torah. Im kayamta ramach sheb'Torah. If you fulfill the 248 that are in the Torah, the positive mitzvahs that are in the Torah, then Hashem promises us something. Ani mekayem ramach evarim shebegufach. Then I will establish and I will fulfill, I think establish the better one, I will establish and uphold your 248 limbs. Meaning, if we work on all the positive mitzvahs that are coming upon us, that we are mechuyat to do, Hashem promises us that we will have healing, that our bones will go back together again. We will have healing in our bones, and healing in our bones, that's healing in our whole life. Because what are we? All we are is, quote, bones, aveirot, limbs. Again, don't think, in terms of bones, like physical bones. But all we are is bones and connections. Right? That's all we are. Avarim and gidim. And the 248 positive mitzvahs that connect to the bone, to the limbs, and there's 365 negative that connect that are corresponding to the connections, to the gidim. In other words, don't violate them. Keep everything connected. As it says in Tehillim 34, verse 21, Shomer kol atzmotai. That's explaining what we saw in Rabbi Nachman when he says, the one who guards or protects my bones. What does that mean? Hashem is protect your bones. Yeah, he's going to protect your bones. He's going to protect your bones. He's going to heal your bones. He's going to make sure your bones don't get sick. He's going to put up a shield on your bones, basically, right? On shield upon your very essence and protect your essence against anything being written on there that shouldn't be written on there. None of those aveirot. And any of the aveirot that are there, we got to start learning how to erase them. How to erase them? We got to go to the Talmud Chacham. What does he do? The Talmud Chacham is like a fire. What does he do? He takes that vessel, that goof, and he immerses you into fire. And he burns up, literally, the words of the aveirot. Just like the fire purifies the kli that absorbed the tam that it was not supposed to absorb, right? The aser tam. Let's say it's a dairy pot and it got, splashed into it when it was hot. Meat flavor. So now it absorbed things that were aser. That's like doing an avera. That's like having those letters of the avera written into our goof. That's the kli now that's become non-kosher, i.e. us. And how does it get fixed? You have to pass it through the fire. That's what? You have to be humbling yourself to the Talmud Chacham. And then what does he do? He's all fire. He's fire of Torah. And that fire of Torah will literally cleanse out of us all of the aveirot that's written us and give us healing. That's how we affect cleansing of ourselves. The next class, I hope, will discuss more this depth of how is it that this Talmud Chacham has this power. We have to talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, the question that was asked earlier. We have to get into some of these more maybe sensitive issues because, like we said a couple of classes ago, some of the things that are very authentically Jewish got hijacked and stolen by other religions. And they took them and abused them and mutilated them in their religions. And as a result, there was a bit of a pushback, maybe not necessarily with kavanah, but it just happened that, since that religion does that, we certainly won't do that. And so we have to combat that. So it is a difficult issue for many people to get their heads around. So we'll have to spend our time is up to Shem on that next time. And we'll follow through what Rabbi Nachman teaches about that. You'll see all the sources right from the Torah. He's not inventing things. Rabbi Nachman doesn't invent things. He just brings the Torah into focus for us so that we can see, in fact, what Chazal has been saying all along. Okay. With that, I'm going to stop the recording so that it doesn't keep going, and then we'll stay on camera for a bit if people want to have a little short discussion or questions. Okay, everybody have a good week.